Savannah, Georgia is a unique city to visit. Between the Spanish moss, architectural beauty, and rich history, there is truly something for everyone. We spent several days exploring the city, and on our trip, we learned little tidbits about this and that. For instance, what is Spanish moss really? Who the heck is Casimir Pulaski? Where's the Forrest Gump bench? So come along with us as we show you tidbits about Savannah, Georgia. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a minute of Colorado Martini. Many movies and TV shows have been filmed in Savannah, but there's two that stand out the most: Forrest Gump and Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Forrest Gump's most iconic scenes is Forrest sitting on a bench waiting for a bus, telling anyone who comes by his life story. Those scenes were filmed in Chippewa Square in Savannah's historic district. To this day, the location is a popular photo destination. The specific spot where the bench once stood is now a garden. The sign for Chippewa Square inhabits the same spot where the bench once stood. The bench itself was temporary and just a movie prop. They needed to be able to film outside the walls of the square, so they placed a bench on the edge of the park. This way, the bus could pull up directly where Forrest was sitting on the sidewalk. That prop now lives in the Savannah History Museum. Do you remember the opening scene of Forrest Gump with the image of a white feather floating through the air? Well, when that feather was descending, it went past a steeple. And that steeple is the Independent Presbyterian Church Administration Building. And it's right next to Chippewa Square. So one of the prettiest houses, or all of the prettiest squares, I think, is Monterey Square. It has the nicest houses. That's the one from Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. No book or movie says Savannah like Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. The movie came out in 1997 and was directed by Clint Eastwood and starred John Cusack and Kevin Spacey. The historic Mercer Williams house on Monterey Square is the scene of the crime that plays a central role in the story. The home was originally owned by the relatives of famous musician Johnny Mercer. You know many of his songs, like Jingle Bells and many more. In 1969, Jim Williams purchased the Mercer house. Williams was arrested on May 2nd, 1981 for the alleged murder in the house of 21-year-old Danny Hansford. with whom he was having a romantic relationship with. After 4 trials for Dan's murder, he was acquitted. It turns out that Jim Williams is the main character in the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, and that the Mercer Williams House Museum was the scene of the real crime, along with the filming location for the movie. Williams also died in the house in 1990. The beautiful Riverside Bonaventure Cemetery was once the Bonaventure Plantation. Some of Savannah's most notable names are buried there. But one of the most famous characters from the cemetery is the Bird Girl. The statue of the Bird Girl graced the cover of the book and the poster, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. The famous Bird Girl statue was originally designed both as art and as a bird seed holder. A Savannah photographer was asked to take a photograph for the cover of the book, and he chose the statue. The book's cover's image became an immediate icon. Soon the statue became a popular stop for tourists. Soon after the release of the movie, the sculpture was removed from the cemetery in 1997 because fans were trampling on the graves. If you'd like to visit the statue, you can find it in Savannah's Telfair Academy. You can also buy replicas of the sculpture online. I put links in the description where you can buy the Bird Girl statue. So what is Spanish moss? Spanish moss is a flowering plant that often grows on large trees in southern United States and other tropical regions. In the United States, it is commonly found on the southern live oak and bald cypress trees of the mid-Atlantic and southeastern states. In addition, Spanish moss is not a parasite to a tree. Rather, it absorbs nutrients and water through its own leaves from the air and rainfall. Spanish moss is neither a moss nor a native to Spain. So how did it get its name? The story goes, Native Americans called it tree hair. French explorers were reminded of the Spanish conquistadors' long beards, so they called it Spanish beard. The Spaniards called it French hair. The French name won, and as time went on, Spanish beard became Spanish moss. One thing is for sure, it makes for beautiful pictures when visiting Savannah. Here are some recommendations for catching that perfect Spanish moss picture. As mentioned before, the Bonaventure Cemetery was once a plantation. Its grounds are now filled with interesting tombstones and vaults. Its spectacular flora surrounds the grounds with colorful camellias and azaleas, along with dogwood and magnolia trees. but it is the limbs arching from the old live oak that makes the cemetery one of the most photographed in the country. The old growth oaks are covered in Spanish moss. The site is a mix of long roads and the old lane that was once the entrance of the plantation. Put that together with unique Victorian headstones and tombs, and you have a recipe for beauty, no matter what time of year you visit. Historical documentation has shown that many of the live oak trees in Bonaventure today are nearly 250 years old. Jones Street is said to be the prettiest street in Savannah. The street is lined with mid-19th century homes and impressive arching live oaks draped in Spanish moss. A stroll down Jones Street is a great place to relax and take in the details of its architecture and its charming brick paved streets and sidewalks. While on Jones Street, make sure to stop by one of Savannah's oldest and best known restaurants, Mrs. Wilkes' Dining Room. The plantation's oak-lined driveway is a must-stop for photography and is probably one of the most photographed lanes in America. The other is Forsyth Park. Between the fountain and wide open spaces, we found Forsyth Park to be an excellent place to take pictures of the trees because we have an excellent view from a distance. We could go on forever suggesting places to take beautiful pictures of the oak with draping Spanish moss.
So when I was a kid, I used to get some of the Spanish moss and I'd take it back home and try to get it to grow in my tree. Well, I had an oak in my backyard, not live oak, but...
Did it ever work?
No, it'd blow away and die.
Could hold Spanish moss. So who is Casimir Pulaski? Casimir Pulaski is an American Revolution hero. He was contributed for saving Charleston from the British and saving George Washington's life at Brandywine. He is also considered the father of the American cavalry. Sadly, the average person doesn't even know who he is. But this Polish born hero is remembered as a man who fought for freedom on 2 continents and has been given the title Soldier of Liberty. In the United States, several streets, bridges, counties, and towns are named in his honor. There are even Casimir Pulaski days throughout the United States. Pulaski sacrificed his life fighting for the city during the American Revolution. In Monterey Square, a large monument was erected in his honor in the mid-1800s. You can find this beautiful monument in the middle of the square. But what a lot of visitors do not realize is Pulaski is buried alongside the monument. He was once buried in a small metal box inside the monument. But during some renovation, they removed his bones for examination and revealed a secret about the general that shocked everyone. You see, the general was most likely intersexual. In other words, he was both male and female. This story is fascinating, and we plan on going into more depth about his life and this monument in another video. Forsyth Park is a large park within the historical district of Savannah. It is one of our favorite parks in all of Savannah. Within Forsyth Park, you can find an amazing fountain. A fountain that equals what you see in Europe. When you see this fountain, you think to yourself, I wonder what Italian sculptor designed this. Or did they bring this over from France? In fact, the city purchased the fountain through a mail order catalog of all things. The fountain is over 150 years old. It was erected in 1858. The park itself was designed after the French idea of having a central public garden where the fountain is the main focus. But it is true, the city ordered the fountain through a mail order catalog, and so did New York, Peru, and France. So this fountain definitely is not unique. The fountain is a must stop on your visit to Savannah. These are just a few little tidbits we learned on our trip to Savannah. We hope you decide to take a trip to Savannah, Georgia. You will be so glad you did.